Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Live Free Now show, bringing you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use to live a free, prosperous, and healthy life. I'm your host, John Bush. As always, today we have a wonderful program lined up for you. We're going to be joined by the one, the only Nicole Sauce of Living Free in Tennessee. She is a powerhouse, one of my favorite presenters, which is why I always invite her to our events. But she lives in Tennessee, which is a very great place to be when crap hits the fan. And if I was more self-interested, I would stop saying that, because I strongly want people to go to Central Texas. And oftentimes I hear people like, yeah, we're thinking about moving. We're leaving California. We're either going to maybe go where you guys are in Central Texas or Tennessee. But at the end of the day, we just want people to be free. And Nicole's got an incredible community there in Tennessee. So we're going to be joined by her, and we're going to tell you all about this crazy thing going on with beef, right? We're going to break down some of the problems that we are facing when it comes to the food supply chain disruption, and also some climate action. No, not climate change, although the climate does change. That's a thing that climates do. But Nicole has some really valuable insights, and then we want to share with you how you can capitalize on these insights. And specifically, we would like to invite you to an incredible workshop that Nicole will be hosting July 24th. That's Sunday at 4 p.m. Central Daylight Time. It's all about how to can beef. A lot of people know how to can vegetables, but did you know you can can beef? So we're going to talk about all that and more. And I strongly encourage you to join that workshop. You can find out more about it at livefree.academy/canning. That's 2 N's, livefree.academy/canning. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Nicole Sauce. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
Excellent. So good to see you. As you can see, I'm not in my studio. We just moved to a new office. So if there's any echo or anything strange, if you wouldn't mind letting us know there in the comments. Yeah. So what have you been up to lately, Nicole? Hey, nice shirt.
Thanks. You like? I thought I'd better represent for this live stream, man.
Let's go.
You know, nobody ever asks me about this shirt when I'm wearing it out and about, and there's so much going on here that I'm surprised. They just sort of
want a conversation starter.
Yeah, you know, it is what it is, but nobody ever asks. They're just like,
Well, what have you been up to lately?
We just moved the sheep to their final pasture. So I got 11 sheep that were grazing through the Holler homestead, and then we grazed them around another property next door, and now they're at their final pasture with a barn. So we were walking sheep down the street right before this live stream, and I was hoping a car would not come and freak them out, and then we'd have sheep scattered all over the woods.
Oh my goodness.
I should have videoed that.
Tell us a little bit about your food production systems you have going, because like I shared just a second ago, we got this workshop that we're taking that's taking place on the 24th. You're going to be leading that, but I consider you to be quite the expert when it comes to preparedness, food production, and getting shit done. So maybe break down for the audience what your setup is all about there in Tennessee.
It's a very simple setup in Tennessee, where I have taken homesteading, where you get a lot of abundance all at one time, and then broken it down into, okay, how do I store this so that I can tap into the value I'm bringing the times of year when these things maybe aren't available. And so one of the skills I've spent a lot of time working on, in fact, I am on a lot of people's speed dial in my county for questions about it, is canning. It was my first sort of domestic love, where if I get really stressed out and overwhelmed, I'll go into the kitchen and I'll knock out a dozen jars of pickles, or I'll knock out a bunch of spaghetti sauce. And when I saw what's been happening in the state of Texas with cattle being sold rapidly right now, because there's not enough rain to grow the grass and there's not enough grass to keep as much of a stock, I realized that an opportunity might be coming in the fall where beef prices may drop as these cattle get sold into the commercial system. In fact, I watched a video about that done by the Shepherdess, which if you have not seen her YouTube channel, it's a great video where it's not panic driven. She's just like, hey, these lines to sell beef at auction are super long. We were here till 5 a.m. to sell ours. We're selling ours because we don't have enough pasture, and I can see in advance I need to. Where these are going are into more of the traditional CAFO systems to be then integrated into the commercial beef system. And that means that there will be a lot of beef coming from this. And then guess what happens after that? It works like any market works. Less beef, higher prices. So if you want to tap into the value of the lower priced beef, one thing you can do without buying 5 chest freezers is go out, buy it, and can it. And then it's shelf stable for a couple years. And it's really tasty, especially in soups and stews, to take that canned beef then and integrate it back into your eating. And then you avoid having to buy really expensive beef when the price goes back up, when farmers are buying back breeding stock from the network, which would then cause the supply of beef to go down.
Heyo, right on. That's some excellent insight that you have there, and I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. So there's these little things that you can pick up on when you're paying attention, and oftentimes there's opportunity. So we're all, struggling more than ever. Actually, sometimes life is pretty damn good, because I think it's really just a mindset, and you just are aware of the state of the world. So it's not like everyone's caught off guard here. And the whole entrepreneurial thing, we could touch into that as well. The whole entrepreneurial thing just gives you just a different level of freedom and control over your life. But there are little opportunities to leverage the current circumstances, and you found one of those. So like Nicole was saying, because of the drought, because of feed shortages, we are going to see some Texas cattle ranchers. We're already seeing that. They're going to be pushing and selling that, right? And the less of something, when you have a whole lot of people selling, this is something I teach in my crypto workshop. So you have more people selling than there are buying. The sellers are competing with one another to do business with the buyers. And the way that they do that is by lowering their price. Conversely, when there's more people buying than there are selling, which we may see coming up in the future with the cattle, is the buyers are competing. The sellers are competing. So they're making their price go up for folks. So it's an opportunity. And tell us more about this canning, because I know that with canning, there's opportunity for things to go wrong, right? Botulism, I guess, is a bacteria.
Yeah, people don't like to hear about botulism because it kills people. And a lot of people, when you start talking to them about canning, are like, yeah, but I'm afraid of 2 things. One, I'm going to use this pressure canner and it's going to explode like a bomb, because we have equated pressure canners with bombs. And the second thing is, what if I poison my family? And so a big part of what we're going to talk about on Sunday is how botulism works, what you can do to double down on not accidentally poisoning your family. The first thing is practice good food handling and canning practices. And the second thing you can do comes when you cook the food on the other side out of the jar, just in case anything got through. There's a hedge against passing on the botulinum toxin to your family. And I think that's something that is usually skipped in canning classes. And it's one of the most important parts of using and cooking with canned foods that you need to know about. And in fact, even in the commercial system, it's not a bad idea to take the commercially canned food, which has a lower chance of having been handled wrong, and put it through this extra check to make sure that you do not accidentally pass on botulism. If you look at the CDC statistics on how botulism is being spread, when it's in canned food, it's not always in just home canned food. Sometimes it's commercially canned food. The most often way people get it, though, guys, realistically, wounds. So they get a wound, botulism lives in the dirt, the wound seals, botulism grows in oxygen-free, warm, moist environments, which your body is, and it starts growing in there. And it's kind of funny how we're so afraid of canned food, but we don't talk about how you can get botulism by cutting your hand.
Yeah, right on. Those are some good insights, and it's all about good practices. And you're going to be teaching those practices in the workshop coming up. Again, it's July 24th, 4 p.m. Central Daylight Time, and folks can get their tickets or learn more at livefree.academy/canning, livefree.academy/canning. Let me bring something to your attention. Maybe you want to be involved. We're involved with the Greater Reset with the Freedom Cell Network, and I want to add Live Free Academy on the mix as well. But let me show you this. And it's funny because it's kind of like a paradox we're in now. So there's this effort being brought together called Save Our Food. And what they're trying to do is it's really like a manifestation exercise, because we're hearing so much about shortages, supply chain disruption, the food supply is insecure. And what this effort, Save Our Food, it's like a coalition basically. They kind of want to just show like, actually, we're okay. There's food production here, regenerative agriculture there. Nicole teaching you how to can beef, right? We are working on some wicking beds at our property. In fact, we just brought together a food share, a meat share, and we brought together and sold shares, and we were able to sell enough shares in just literally like 2 or 3 days to have a whole cow butchered, and it gets delivered next week. That's part of our Freedom Cell thing. But let me ask you this. Do you feel food scarce? Do you feel insecure about your food game?
I do not. I feel insecure about being able to get imported chocolate from Switzerland consistently for the next 12 months. I'm less worried about will I get enough calories, and that's because I live on a homestead and I have a network of other homesteaders and farmers in the local area, and I have spent years developing those relationships and connecting the dots. So I don't buy food at the grocery store much anymore. Every so often I go in there and I'll buy a special, pepper sauce I like or something, and then I'll look at prices. And one of the prices I've watched is the price of the cheapest ground beef at Walmart, because I'm just always interested in that. And it was 49 cents 3 years ago, and it was $3.99. It got as high as $3.99 this year. It's back down near $2 a pound. That to me is just an interesting data point. But for my own food, because I have been working and connecting locally and then regionally, like I'll even source from out of the state. If somebody has a wonderful grass-fed cow in Kentucky, which happened this year, I'll buy half of it and we'll put it in our freezers. The fact that those relationships are there makes me feel a lot stable. And the fact that I can grow and preserve and put up the food, it's very empowering. So I may not have as much variety as I used to have if we have bigger supply chain issues come through in the next 12 months, but I'm not going to starve. And in fact, I'm going to eat the foods I eat every day that I really like, including high quality grass-fed beef.
Nice. I love that. I love that. So I want to encourage folks to check out saveourfood.net. That's saveourfood.net. It's basically just an effort. These are the groups, lots of cool folks. Derek Rose's Conscious Resistance Network, which we're streaming to their Facebook and Rofkin, by the way. You got Nature Healing, Gen Strength. I don't know what a lot of these are actually, but I recognize Sayer G's Green Med Info, Jim Gale's Food Force Abundance. So I'll put you in contact with these folks.
Yeah,
Nicole, maybe
definitely.
if you're living free in Tennessee. But really, they want to do is like a social media day of action. So tomorrow, actually, they just want folks to share pictures of food and farmers markets. And
hey, I have a live feed tomorrow morning. If I get connected with them, my people will probably do that, because that's exactly when we're doing farmers markets and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I just I have their email address, but just for the info@saveourfood.net. If anybody's watching and wants to get involved, I just joined the Telegram group and just said, hey, I want Live Free Academy to be a supporter. And at the end of the day, like, definitely get your logo on the site, but all you got to do is talk about it, and that's really what they're trying to do. So there's this mindset and a way of life that I've really been trying to help people tap into. And the contrast is really like victimhood and empowered. And not even doesn't have to be victim. There's just so many people that are going about life not in control. They're carrying out someone else's program. But if you can shift your mindset first, and then the actions that you take, you can live a life where you don't feel insecure, where you're less anxious. Now, we're not saying everything's perfect and peachy. I feel anxiety sometimes too, but I'm not as worried as some folks that are just spending all their time watching the news, or even within our community, spending all their time going down this rabbit hole or that, this conspiracy theory here or there. How important do you think it is when it comes to victimhood or empowerment for people to get some small victories, to start the garden, to take the tomato plant from seed to fruit? How important is it for people to develop this momentum and eventually step into a place where they get a significant amount of their food from their own property?
Well, the way you become food independent, or less food dependent, or less food system dependent, is to start either sourcing from other farmers or people in your community, or growing it yourself. And I like to call it printing money, right? I have tomatoes growing right outside my window here that are as tall as my house, and they keep the sun from hitting my house on the south side, which helps cool the house too. So that's two things happening from one plant. But one of them had a branch break off, and it was a sucker. And I had an open spot, and I took it and I put it into water, and within a week it had roots, and within 3 weeks it was doubling in size, and I had a second tomato plant. It's only through trying things do you learn how easy it is to start food and grow food, but then also how hard it is, right? Because if you're not practicing these things and building them into your life, when you do need to put seeds in the ground and grow them, if you're doing it for the first time, you learn all those lessons that you learn anytime you do something new and for the first time, and some stuff goes wrong and some stuff goes well. When you've been doing it season after season after season, you kind of get into this thing where, well, it's February, it's time to start some seedlings inside, and oh, it's March, I'm going to put out these early spring things. And this is my timeline, right, in Tennessee. This is not necessarily John Bush's in Texas or somebody in Michigan to the north of me. Well, it's April, it's the end of April, I better put the tomatoes out. And it just becomes this cycle. And then you start celebrating the first ripe tomato off the vine. It's beautiful. It's like here we almost have a ceremony where it's like, how many people are eating this tomato? Okay, we'll cut it into that many pieces. It's the first vine ripe one. And then by mid-August, I'm drowning in tomatoes, making sauces and stewed tomatoes and all sorts of different things, freeze drying it, drying them, all sorts of different ways to preserve. And I think starting those plants is so important. Even if you're in an apartment right now with a windowsill and you start a pot of basil, and you just start raising your herbs, because like one of those packets of herbs at the store costs what, like $4 or $5 now, just for fresh basil. You can grow that on your windowsill and make a packet of that a week right now for free. And all you had to do was spend $3 or $4 on seeds, and you're getting it week after week after week. It regenerates itself. It's like printing money, as I like to say.
I love it. I love it. And it really is trial and error. I mean, and for me, because there's been different phases in my life where I was heavier into the food production. Like at one point we had over 100 chickens, like 120 chickens. And that was cool. Talk about printing money. They would literally shell out dozens and dozens of eggs a day, and we would use those eggs to barter with other people. In fact, for a while, we were selling a dozen eggs for a silver dime. We were trying to bring back a dime a dozen, and the price of silver went down. It was like $1 or like $1.80 for a dozen of our farm fresh free range eggs. So it wasn't worth it anymore. But it ebbs and flows for me. And now it's going back, I guess, into the flow because we have this 10-acre homestead, and I too am aware of some of the issues. And me personally, most of my food comes from the grocery stores. In fact, almost all of it. Now we got this beef share. We do go to farmers markets from time to time, but it's become more of a priority for me. So me and my good friend Brad, who lives on the property with us, we're building wicking bed gardens right now, and we got 8 IBC tanks. We're gonna have 16 wicking bed gardens. But I tell you what, something that I've been becoming more and more conscious of, and I'd love to get your take on it, is a lot of people are stuck in their comfort zone. And one of the biggest motivators that gets people to act is avoiding pain, right? People want to pursue joy, happiness, comfort, abundance, wealth. They pursue the good feelings, but they also want to avoid the bad feelings. And my concern is that even though we have all this crazy stuff happening all around us, people are still not going to act until they're forced to by discomfort. And a lot of folks just can't anticipate that discomfort coming down the pike if they don't set themselves up or put themselves in a position of empowerment like you are. And one thing I recognize, like it's hot in Texas right now, it's 100+ degrees, but me and my buddy Brad we're still working out there in the heat, sweating, and like the first time we're trying to do them in series, and the first time we tested it, the water didn't pour over to the next wicking bed. And we thought we were all going to have this successful test and everything. It's hard and it's uncomfortable to be out in the heat. So for folks that are listening to this, for folks that follow your work, and they know that they should be growing their own food, but they just haven't gotten started, what would you say to motivate them or maybe push them over the edge to take responsibility for that, at least a good chunk of it? What would you say to those folks that know that they should be doing it, but they're still not doing it?
do one thing. Choose one thing and do it, and start it. Promise me you'll start it August 1st. August 1st is about a week from now, little over a week. Decide what that thing is and do it. Whether it be start with some potted plants to grow vegetables, or, I consider sourcing a local cow and buying meat in bulk to be one thing, even if you're not raising the beef, because what you do when you source that cow, you get a quarter or a half cow. And for context, a half a cow is what it takes to feed two of us here for a year on beef who are heavy meat eaters. And I know there's probably some vegetarians in here, but source that, and then you learn how to cook for the next year. Like, commit to just eating that and never buying beef at the store at that point. It will make you learn how to cook all the different cuts that come with that. Those skills just sort of automatically spill over into the next thing, where you start saying, okay, now that I can do potted plants, I'm going to try this little garden. Okay, now that I've got those two things going, I realized I live in Texas and water is a problem here, and wicking beds make more sense, which is why I've been so excited to see you making those beds, John, because that is exactly the right thing to do with the amount of sun onslaught you get. You might need shade cloth over them too at this time of year. And then from there, maybe you'll decide I want some chickens for eggs. And the way I see anybody peeling back from the grocery store is doing one thing at a time. And then the other angle at which you can attack it is do start buying stuff from the farmers markets and other producers directly. It's amazing how quickly you can peel back, but it's one part skill development and one part commitment to do it. And we know how bad it was in 2020 when all the meat processing factories were shutting down because of the thing. And when they shut down, farmers were having to slaughter and bury basically any livestock that they couldn't sell into the system. There wasn't a system to sell it into. They didn't have a way to go direct to consumer. So we had two things going on, both with vegetables stuck in Florida, composting outside, and animals stuck and getting killed and just also composted or burned. Meanwhile, you watch the stocks in the store go back and back and back. To me, that just shone a huge light on how non-resilient, how weak, how vulnerable the commercial food system is. We cannot depend on the commercial food system. It is a modern day miracle of efficiency and what can be done. We feed a lot of people for not very much money, if you think about it. But with that comes a weakness where if anything in the system goes wrong, they've got it so refined that if anything in the system goes wrong, there's no food. We see it when hurricanes come through. We see it when tornadoes hit areas. We see it when bad ice storms hit. And we saw it when an illness hit and, a couple of factories were shut down and we only have, 4 or 5 or 6 big meat processing plants in the entire country. It did birth a burgeoning craft meat processing world at the state level, but man, that's not enough. And we saw people starting to source directly from farmers. And then when everything came back, they went back to their comfort zone. And I'm like, these farmers are not going to be there if you don't support them. They're not going to be there. They're going to go out of business. They came at the behest of you. They came to help fill the need that you saw when all of a sudden you couldn't get things at Publix or Kroger or Safeway or wherever you buy your foods, Fred Meyer's. And then the minute it was back in the big grocery stores and a little bit less expensive, people stopped buying from those same producers. I've seen some go out of business since then. That's scary because the more we have that local thriving environment and then regional environments, the better off we are. It's like a backstop to that whole crash. But it's going to crash. There's going to be another thing that goes wrong, and they have not made any change in distribution or how they produce or any of it. That just-in-time delivery is still there. Just-in-time delivery means not at all if it gets disrupted.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. And that's great advice. Just start with one thing. Just start somewhere, even if you start small. And I want to encourage folks, if you haven't dabbled in food production, it's hard. Like, it's easy, like you said, once you start getting it and you learn it, it becomes a habit. but it's a pain in the ass, man. If it's not the heat or a lack of nitrogen, and one of the hardest things possibly is having to fight back all the damn pests and those stinking little worms that crawl up and eat all your leaves and stuff. So you got to start learning it now. Learn now while you have relative comfort, so you're not put in a position where you are forced to figure it out. And by then you're really struggling. And for the parents out there, the last thing you want to see is your kiddos go hungry. So I don't know how bad it's going to get. That's one motivator. We want to avoid the pain. But at the end of the day, this is how we ought to be living anyway. Connected with our community, closer to the land, having a relationship with our food. There's a spiritual aspect, there's a convenience aspect, there's a health aspect. It's just a much better way to do things. All right, so why don't you tell us a little bit more about this workshop that's taking place July 24th, 4 p.m. Anybody can sign up and you'll be able to join the Zoom. You go to livefree.academy/canning, livefree.academy/canning. A lot of folks are familiar with the canning process for vegetables. I didn't know that it was a huge thing to can beef. So tell us, what are they going to learn when they come to the workshop? And is it okay if they're complete novices? Not only have they not canned beef, but they haven't canned vegetables also.
If you have canned and you take this workshop and you've never canned meat, you're going to come out of this knowing how to can meat. You're going to see what can go wrong. You're going to see things that look really funny to you on how you can meat, because I'm going to show you both a hot pack and a raw pack method. And the raw pack method from the home canner who is used to canning vegetables and can pressure can is just weird. I'll just throw that out there. But if you've never canned before, I will start at the beginning and talk about food safety. And then we're going to talk about how to handle the food. I will talk a little bit about what the difference between water bath canning and pressure canning is. And then we're going to focus in on how to can beef, how long it can store for, how you successfully store things that you have canned, and make it so that you can get this done with a stovetop pressure canner or an electric pressure canner, doesn't matter what. The thing about canning that I think is really cool is there are enough people around who know how to do it. All you have to do is go into your community network and say, does somebody have a pressure canner I can borrow? I need to can some beef. You don't even necessarily need to buy the equipment. So many canners are so excited to empower other people to can that they will let them use pressure canners. In fact, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, I couldn't find the lid to my pressure canner. And I was like, I can't find my lid. And I have 2 bushels of green beans to can. And one of my friends said, come on over. And she handed me her canner. And I used it for the whole summer until I found where I had put that lid. And it was a very strange place. But that's a totally different story about not tricking yourself and putting something somewhere safe. Never put things somewhere safe, and remember that you'll get to it later. So that's what's going to be covered in the class. I'm going to talk about tips and tricks that I've used. We're going to talk about kinds of jars to source and how to know if your lids are good and all the things that you're going to want to know about canning. It's step by step. We put aside 2 hours for this so that there's plenty of time for questions if something needs clarification, and also so that you can see canning happening, right? I'm going to end up starting my first batch right as we start this webinar, so that before the end of the webinar, you can see one batch come out, because it takes about 90 minutes to can beef. And I wanted to make sure that you'd be able to see some actual jars come out and see what that looks like in real time.
Right on. Yeah. Super excited that you're putting that together. And I should mention there is a bonus as well. As soon as you register, you get instant access to a introduction to canning talk. So if you register now, go ahead and take that introduction. It's about an hour, and then you'll have a nice firm understanding, and you can dive deeper when it comes to beef specifically. So super excited that you're providing this. I think it's a valuable asset. Education is so important, but we influencers, so to speak, or leaders, or just folks that are putting ourselves out there, there's only so much that we can do. You have to take responsibility for putting this information into action. And that's really what it's all about. So I want to thank you, Nicole, for providing this information and for leading by example with what you're doing there, not just with the food production and the entrepreneurship with your coffee business, but also you've managed to build a really incredible community. So kudos to you.
Yeah, I'd love to say, anybody hearing this who's like, I already know how to can beef. Do you know somebody who needs to learn how? Because literally the opportunity, if it's coming, is coming this fall and it's right in front of us. And it can save them a lot of heartache to know how to preserve meat shelf stable when meat can be gotten for cheap.
Right on. Cool, cool. Living free in Tennessee. There you go. Thanks again, Nicole.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye. All right, so make sure you check out livefree.academy/canning. That's livefree.academy/canning. The workshop is taking place July 24th at 4 p.m. CDT. There are still spots available, although tickets are selling fast, so make sure you act now. Again, that's livefree.academy/canning. And that was Nicole Sauce from Living Free in Tennessee. You could check out her podcast, her website, all the cool stuff that she's doing at livingfreeintennessee.com. livingfreeintennessee.com. And from there, you'll be able to connect with her incredible coffee company. Super fresh, super delicious, the real deal kind of stuff. And not only that, not only is it great coffee, but you're also supporting Nicole and the work that she does in this world to help people to become more self-reliant and at the end of the day, more free. All right, it's John Bush signing off for the Live Free Now show, bringing you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use to live a free, prosperous, and healthy life. Peace and freedom. Stay free out there, guys.